Hey everybody, welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where we're here to give our final thoughts on Root, a game of woodland might and right.
Yay.
Enthusiasm.
Excitement, enthusiasm. I think we're going to give some interesting counter points here in this discussion.
Seriously, what were the odds?
Of you getting all of the domination cards?
That's
Quite honestly, what are the odds?
in a deck that size.
Yeah. Round 1, round 2, round 3. That was the order they came out.
We gave these a good shuffle as well.
I know, but they weren't together because we'd had them before they were shuffled. They were separated by species, not type. But I was just like, oh come on! That's when I showed it to the camera. I was really surprised.
Yeah.
That was.
I was wondering what you were showing the camera, actually. I thought maybe you had just lots of bird cards or lots of cards that you couldn't use or something.
Well, I had lots of cards I couldn't use. Yeah. Although I am happy with myself for keeping that chain going.
Yeah,
That was good, Ollie. That was really good.
No, you did really well.
Because I really thought I was going to screw that up really early on, especially when there was 2 times I was going to put something in a battle, and I didn't, and I used it for something else, and I went afterwards. And that one, I used a fox card that got me 1 Veep instead, and I could have had that like 4 turns before I ended up getting it, because I kept playing the wrong cards.
Right, that's the same one I've got, the Command War in.
But I had that, and there was stuff I wanted to put. The one thing with this, I really need to pay attention to what cards I'm planning to put out. But pretty fun overall. Pretty fun to do. And
so did you find the Eerie Dynasties to be very, very brain burnery? Or did you find it to be like sort of easy to...
It was easy to pick up, but the one thing for it is you need to keep your plan in mind. Because twice I got distracted by arguing with you guys on the table and then misplaying. And I realised afterwards, I was like, damn it, I had that card to do this with it, and I've done that with it because I was too busy shouting at someone to pay attention to what I was doing. Which is entirely my own fault.
Well, there is a lot of table talk in this game.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because it's one of those sort of...
Oh, yeah.
One of those war games, and it reminds me a lot of Inish in that respect.
Yeah, it's definitely... mind manipulation.
I am going to warp your minds with the power of the lizard brain.
Well, there is a balance of power, and without the vagabond in the game, because the vagabond's the one that really sort of upsets the balance. It really is sort of about making sure you keep your eyes on all fronts, because if you focus too much on one player, you can easily allow another player to creep into the lead, and in some players' cases, especially with the Riverfolk, they actually benefit quite a lot from just kind of hanging back and preserving their funds and gaining points that way. In fact, you gain a lot of points by not doing anything at all and just keeping everyone sitting in the funds pool.
Yeah.
But I've got to be very careful, because by keeping things in the funds, then that exposes me as well, because if you get rid of one of my trading posts, then I lose half of them.
Yeah.
And it's rounded up, so if you got 3, you lose 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Other people will take advantage of you not paying attention to their strategy to just be like, great, you were so focused on doing this that I managed to do this, this, and this. Like the mercenaries, perfect example. I think that's the furthest those guys moved. After they stopped dying.
Yeah.
There's so many dead otters in this area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of battles there.
A lot of otter.
Oh, poor otters.
The poor otters. Did you think it felt very different to when we played the prototype with...
Yes.
Or the
well,
print,
yes
not the
and
prototype,
no.
the print play.
What was the print and play like?
I mean, it's
very
very
similar. Very similar.
And we had the Eerie, the Woodland Alliance, and the Marketed Cat in that. And we did play the Eerie wrong, but...
I don't think the Eerie was that much different.
I mean, on the table it felt very similar, even though we were doing the decree wrong.
How would you do? How were you doing it?
We were saying that at the end of every evening phase for the Eerie, they could pick up all of their non-Vizier cards.
Oh, that would have been so... But then you'd have to discard them all.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were much more limited in the amount of stuff you could do, but then you were almost never going into turmoil.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also in the print and play version, you had to do these in the order they were laid out.
Yeah.
Not in any order in the column.
I mean, to be honest, I lost 4 points. So where was I before I took my stuff and went home?
20...
I think you're around 2021.
19, 20, 21?
Yeah, somewhere around here.
Right, so I lost 4 points for that. So if I was there, So if I was still using VP and hadn't had that break, I would have been quite far ahead. But to be honest, sometimes it's better to break because that combat guy is useful. The despot I didn't get the benefit out of once because every time I got into a combat with that, I couldn't do anything.
I also feel like towards the end game, it's actually good for you to sub in the
combat guys.
the builder actually, because then you can use those crafting cards to get those last points you need.
Yeah,
and give you a bump.
I'm a little bit unsure the viziers should count on the humiliate because you have to have them. So there's always going to be 2 points you lose.
But I think that's to stop you just going into turmoil all the time when it suits you. You know, it's to sort of give you a bit of a penalty for doing it.
It's to give you a bit of a penalty, but it's the fact that you want bird cards on the other pieces anyway. So all that is it's guaranteed -2, and because you've got that crafting handicap, it's very difficult to sort of work your way out of it.
But if you don't put out any bird cards only, then you don't have to be humiliated that much.
I know, but if I don't put out any bird cards, you guys just stop me from doing everything.
No, just really clever planning. That's all it takes.
Sodding mouse traitor village.
Oh, look at him.
Yeah.
He looks like you going on holiday.
It does. It's far too much.
and this is my face after that village got taken.
Uh-oh. Mad Ollie.
Wait. And that's also my face. And
this is me and Michael.
And this was the guy I hired.
So, following up on this, the art is great.
I love the art.
The look of the game is great. The screen print meeples are great. The art on the cards is great. The art on the boards is great.
Yes, it's done to a very high.
It's funny because it's kind of it made me think of Happy Tree Friends when I first saw it.
Oh yeah,
very much like we've got these lovely woodland critters and they're just annihilating one another.
I mean, when we're reading the rules and it's talking about the lizard cult radicalizing the citizens of the forest, that was just hilarious.
That was
it's just the juxtaposition, right?
Yep.
Because it actually does feel quite like a war game, although you could play it not like. I mean, we didn't have a battle for ages.
No, but that was mostly my default because I didn't want to kill your guys and give you acolytes. But I had no reason to.
And I don't know if I wasn't aggressive enough because I thought no.
You do have really low aggression.
It is, but I
do think it's not really in your interests.
But then you were putting out loads of gardens, and I feel like I should have done.
Maybe done something about that. But Ollie should have done something about that. I mean, he's like the super aggressive Eerie, and he didn't even have a battle card for turns and turns.
To be honest, up until that point where I was about to when I turmoiled on the turn when I was about to do all of my combat and that I'd prepared for. Because I was just like, oh, damn it.
Oh.
But if I'd have done that the turn before, and I probably could have done it, I probably would have taken out 2 gardens, and I'm not going to lie, one of your trading posts.
Yeah.
Because I was going to go for that one, and I'm pretty sure I could have moved them into there and taken it out because I don't think you reinforced that guy once.
No, I was lucky because for the first half of the game, and the lizard call is like a snowball, right? Yeah. They sort of build momentum, but you have to have the gardens out, right?
Yeah.
Because without the gardens, I can't craft anything. I can't score any points. And even when I get the gardens, I still have to have the cards. So I have to keep sort of spending the cards to do things, which is fine. But I pick them all back up.
Yeah, you get them
back. I pick them all back up unless I spend them to score. So I need to be crafting things. So it's that sort of challenge, right?
I mean, the Sanctify thing surprised me because I went from having guys there and a roost to all of a sudden I've got no guys there and you've got a garden there. And I think I had 1 guy left over. And it's like, what the hell happened? And I never got that back because...
Well, first off, I did favor of the foxes.
Yep.
To get rid of that. And then I sanctified it later.
I had a guy in there somehow still.
Yeah, because when I
had to move something.
When I sanctify it, you don't lose the guy. You just lose the building. It just becomes a garden.
Yeah, but I was just like, I went from having that being highly fortified to, oh my god, what's happened to me?
Yeah.
And annoyingly, that was the turn where I was like, right, got a red card I'm going to put in the battle. I'm going to take out that garden because I get 2 attacks minimum against him.
But I did feel quite different to the game we played, the print and play version, I thought.
In what way?
Well, so this is what I liked, right? I liked that it felt very similar in a lot of ways. Like you're still vying for territory, you're still building buildings and all that kind of stuff. But playing the Lizard Cult felt very different to playing the Woodland Alliance. I don't know if you thought the Riverfolk felt very different to the Marquis de Cat.
Very much so.
But I liked that it was immediately recognizable as Root, despite the fact we were playing with two completely different factions, and we're playing another faction differently. And yet it also felt different.
Yeah.
And I think it really balances that really well, because it could feel like a completely different game, but then it's kind of like so much to learn and track. Whereas it keeps enough similar, there's enough sort of commonality
that you're not feeling like you're having to learn the whole thing all over again.
Just because you changed one or two factions. Yeah. So it's like, here's a new interesting asymmetrical challenge in all the right ways.
I agree with that. It's I don't think once you've learnt what your particular faction does as well, I don't think it's difficult to remember bits either. It's more difficult trying to remember what the other people do. Yeah. And keeping a track of that.
But I don't...
Because everyone's different.
But everyone is different. But they all kind of have the same objectives.
Well, I was just going to say, but they don't differ massively.
They have enough commonality that you sort of have an idea of what everyone's trying to do. You know that ruling clearings is good, and getting buildings out is good. I mean, and then there's sort of like crafting as well, which is interesting. Everyone crafts a bit differently. Ollie's got the toughest crafting, I think, on the board here.
Oh, yeah.
But you and I are both quite... Like, my crafting's vulnerable because the gardens go back on the garden board. Whereas your crafting is great because once you've opened up the trade posts, you can just keep crafting, and that's really good.
Yeah.
But you have to have the cards for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I didn't focus on it enough towards the end. Like, I stalled in my gameplay towards the end because I think I was concentrating too much on getting the trade posts out, thinking how on earth am I going to get your pieces in order to do that, rather than concentrating to see if I could get the points doing the crafting instead. That's another reason why I think I stalled a little bit, because I was too fixated on trying to get your pieces.
To be honest, I was quite surprised when going back to when you did the combat, and I really, really wanted you to take this out.
Yeah, that was an error on my part. I probably should have just been spelled it out and said,
you should have.
Do that. But you seem, because after you went there, you seemed like you had a plan. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something about your strategy I don't know. But I kind of wish it'd been more forceful of, take him out!
Yeah.
Sweep the knee!
And I think it was too short-sighted in my mind, because I was like, oh, well, this is only a rabbit guard, and that doesn't help.
But when you said that, I totally believed you. I was like, oh yeah, he has thought about it, and he's right. It never occurred to me that there was this sort of like...
the next stage.
Yeah, the next stage, which is then you would rule that clearing, then you can move into the adjacent clearings and
gone there or there,
get me where I'm super vulnerable. I mean, yeah, this was so valuable to me, and nobody ever went there.
No, and that's because I got rid of here.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I went
Thank
down
God
here
for Favour of the Mice.
Oh, God, Favour of the Mice, Favour of the Foxes. Those cards are devastating.
Yeah.
So...
It's to the point of I sacrificed 3 of my finest avian warriors just to get rid of the sodding Favour of the Bunnies.
Yeah, it's devastating that they get rid of buildings as well. Do we have one here?
No.
There might be in the pack.
Pretty sure
God, I really hope we didn't play that wrong.
No, I don't think so.
If we did, I'm calling it a victory for me and Michael. Moral, if nothing else.
Literally lost them all. But I was super duper lucky to get this card as well. And what I was fearing was that when I put it out on the table, you guys would immediately come in and just start ruining all my clearings. Because I get 1 point for every clearing I rule.
Maybe I didn't realise what the card did.
Yes, that removing pieces is... The thing is, I almost think that would be more balanced if it was...
But we didn't know you had it.
But I had to put it on the table for a whole turn before I could play it.
Yeah.
Because I have to craft it in the evening phase, and then I can only use it in the birdsong phase.
I have a feeling that'd be a little bit less devastating if it was you pick 2 out of the 4, considering so many things. Like I was pretty much mono by that point because of attrition. But I don't know. Maybe they playtested it, and it being any less powerful made it too bad of a catch-up mechanic.
Or maybe it was. Yeah, I mean, the game is actually relatively short.
Actually, saying that, I don't think anyone but you could have done that to me. Because it costs 3 rabbits,
Yeah,
do
Michael
it.
couldn't do it.
Yeah, you.
Because he couldn't get the final trade post out.
Yeah, so quite literally, I think you guys were.
Oh, I couldn't have even done it. I didn't have the rabbits.
You did?
No, I didn't.
No.
Oh, for the love of. Well, that was a waste of time.
Neither of us checked to see if I could actually use it.
I was too afraid of you being able to use it. You'd done it to me twice.
And I was like, oh, I should have used that card. I never just thought to think. Because I was just like, at the time, I was like, oh, well, loads of crafting shit.
In all honesty.
Meanwhile, all the comments on yesterday's videos are like, you couldn't have used it.
Yeah.
Cool.
The thing is, though, like, I was in too much of a panic by that point because you'd done it to me twice.
But the game is actually relatively short as well. So I think, even if, you have sort of like a really bad time.
It took us 7 days. What?
I mean, but for this kind of game, it's actually quite short, which I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's that short. I also like that there's not a huge amount you do on your turn. The turns feel just long enough that they're sort of interesting and there's enough going on and enough to think about.
Yes.
But not so long that you're really getting bogged down and paralyzed.
Yes. Or that the other two are waiting forever for you to finish what you're doing.
Exactly. And what you're doing is interesting as well. And there's enough going on that people sort of are paying attention, except for you, because apparently you're just balancing the bank books over there.
Yeah.
We all got a bit distracted.
I felt at times you two weren't paying attention to what I was doing.
I was trying to, but it's very far away.
Yeah, it is quite far away, and also it was a bit like you were sort of like you were playing bank books, like economy, balancing the economy over there.
That's my abacus.
Abacus 101. Have to admit, I like the fact. I mean, this is the competitive version, but there's at least 2 co-op versions.
So you can play it, solitaire or co-op.
Mm. Yeah, but the villains in that are the invading cats, but they're the mechats.
Yeah, they're the mechats because they're AI cats.
The mechanical was it mechanical Marquis?
I think it was mechanical marquee cat. Something I don't know.
Mechanical the cat.
Mechanical the cat.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I like that there's a lot of game here, but and I want to try the other races. I really want to try the other teams. I'm so excited to pick up the other teams and try again, or even try the lizard cult again and sort of do it differently. Because now that you guys have grokked the garden thing, I probably couldn't get away with that again, and I need to change up my tactics a bit. I'm
going to salt the land.
Salt the land with the followers of Garth. And that's cool, because that's like, but it's not, but also I'm not daunted. Like sometimes when I look at playing Vast, I'm a bit like, oh God, I'm going to have to teach Vast, But with this, especially if like a couple of you have played before, give someone like the Marquis de Cat one of the easy factions.
One of the easy factions, yeah.
And that like, because with Vast, what they did.
All the Eerie Dynasties.
Yeah, they're low complexity too. But actually, but Michael and I were both on high complexity, and the score was still very balanced at the end.
Woo, gummy.
So that's cool. That's cool.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, high five. Yeah. So with Vast, what they did was they gave you 5 difficulty cards, so you could handicap or buff a player who is more or less experienced to try and balance it. So if it's like someone who doesn't know how to play. And the reason we're comparing it to Vast, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is because Vast was Leader Games' predecessor to Root. Although different designer, Patrick Leader designed Vast and Cole Whirler designed Root, but obviously developed by Leader Games and Patrick Leader. So the difficulty, in that was these cards, but that's such a difficult assessment to make, because you could be playing with someone who's a really, really, really good gamer, but has just never played Vast before. And then it's like, do you give them a handicap or not? And, how big of a handicap do you give them? Or do you give the experienced players handicaps instead?
1d6.
And so that's a really difficult call to make, and you don't want to run the risk of ruining someone's first experience either. Whereas with this, it's like, okay, great, well, you're a new player, I'll just give you one of the low complexity factions, and I'll take one of the high complexity factions, And then if you still feel like you need to give them a hand, just point out, like, oh, I'm the Lizard Cult, destroy my gardens, don't let me make them. Or I'm the Eerie Dynasties, pay attention to the moves I have to make, and then prevent me from doing those.
They even tell you on the overview card how to screw over that faction.
Yeah, although it didn't seem to say anything on this one. Well, it did sort of, actually, say that about the gardens. I did read it. Where is it?
It mentions nothing of gardens.
The cult's gardens spread the news of their lord during throngs of pilgrim, so they rule it does, yeah.
That's a bit strange. Yeah.
So this is sort of what I was, weirdly, when I read this, though they seem gentle at first, the cult will gradually radicalize the followers into acolytes who enact conspiracies against clearings of the outcast, the suit discarded most throughout the last round. Now, when I first read that, I was like, okay, they're going to be one of those slow starters and then heavy finishers because they seem gentle at first.
Which they were.
But will gradually radicalize their followers. And I actually had a bad starting hand as well. So I would
have loved that starting hand.
Yeah, I had your starting hand.
I would have killed you for that starting hand.
You probably had my starting hand, but we should have swapped. Can you take a mulligan?
Yes. Let's start over. No, I don't want that.
Yes, let's start again.
Not with dominance. Not again. All right, that one was a good one. I'll put that on recruit. I'll have no one getting it.
But I really like the dominance cards because they allow you to come back into the game when it's already partway through and sort of have a real chance at victory, and your objective changes, which is interesting because now suddenly you've got this different objective to keep in mind. And I'm a Bond villain, by the way, right now. Just
I'd clocked.
And and then everyone's got to get their mind around this new objective that you're trying to complete, which is really interesting. And some of this, like the dominance cards, especially for the lizard cult, can be really strong.
That's why I was terrified of giving any of them up.
But on the other hand, if I don't have if the dominance card I have isn't the same as where this is, I'm in real trouble because I can't really start any fights.
Yeah, but
in the clearings that I control,
it's not that difficult for you to move that if you want it.
I have no control over that.
You can dump cards.
Not easily because I have to dump them to score the gardens. It's actually really hard for me to dump cards or craft them, and then most of the time when I craft, they're permanent and they go up there, or at least some of the time
until you use them.
Yeah, well, not all of them are used. The 3 up there don't get used.
No, I'm thinking of the ones you threw away, but I'm trying to remember if they were bird or not.
I had a lot of bird cards.
You had so many bird cards. Those traitorous birds.
Look, I was doing you a favor. They were. I don't know why I had so many birds. We hate them.
Apparently, they really didn't like the vulture lord. So it was only when I swapped over to the owl that they started flocking back to me.
So, did you? How did you find the Riverfolk company? Was it an interesting challenge?
Otters.
Yeah, very much. I liked playing with them. I
feel like you could have got more mileage out of the score dividends.
Yeah, I think because you two were adamant that giving me your tickets, because you were concerned that I'd got so many points at the start.
Such an early lead.
Yeah, you both stalled my progression.
Yeah, it's tough when you get a breakaway lead.
It was also harsh that when I wanted to give you when I wanted to buy stuff from you, you shoved your prices up.
And I was getting slow and steady, but I didn't then utilise then I wasn't getting as many in my payments and I couldn't do as much, and that's how I think you were able to get your gardens out more and then I wasn't concentrating on drafting cards either because I didn't have enough, and I felt like I was having to do the most optimum moves with the minimal amount of people here. So I felt like I felt like you two felt like I was a risk, and that inhibited my gameplay after that, and it didn't change my plan sufficiently.
I think the Riverfolk can lend themselves a lot to sort of a manipulator from the sides. It's like, I could do all of these things, so maybe you should do that. And then if you can get someone to sort of do what you want or balance the game out themselves, you can just store everything in funds and get lots of money that way.
Yeah.
Get lots of points that way.
Yeah.
But you kind of got to pace yourself as well, because you'll lose out all your money if you haven't used it. So you've got to kind of try and predict when we're going to come and get you and destroy one of your trade posts. Because if all your stuff is in funds waiting to be scored as dividends, when we destroy a trade post, you're going to lose it all.
But I like them. I like them as a faction, definitely.
I mean, it's good.
And they were very competitive.
It's good when...
I mean, you were very close to winning.
It's good when, even if you lose the trade post, you still have half the benefit, because you still got the points for putting it out in the first place, and you still get to use it. You get to use the space. And
you still get the crafting spot.
I think it's almost, for a lot of the early game, if you put out as many posts as you can on the knowledge that they're going to get destroyed. Don't put too much into your funds, but just enough to tempt people into doing it. and then you'll cycle through most of them, and then all of a sudden you've got maybe 1 or 2 left. You can heavily defend them, and then be like, right, all in funds, and then do what Michael did with the land, but do that with your funds, because how many guys do you need for a victory point for funds?
2.
So 2. So if you get like 6 in there, there's 3 victory points hanging over.
I feel like that must be easier said than done, though.
No, easier said than done, but it's one of those things of it's more difficult to break someone's funding if they've already intentionally made you destroy the trading posts that don't get them any points. I mean, even if it goaded me into doing it because I had a leader that would have given me some points on the thing of he makes it attractive for me to trade my troops to him. And he's also telling me, destroy the trading post because you'll get a point for it. And then not appearing to hold it against me is forcing me to do his work for him. Because it would work for him in the long run.
And I wonder if, because you've put out 6 trade posts, which is actually 12 warriors from your board. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you could have earned more points than just the 2 from the trade posts if you'd kept some of those 12 on your board and used them as funds.
But it's only 1 point for every 2. I pay 2 to get 2 points, but I need 2 just to get 1 in the funds.
That's true, but then you can use them more than once.
True.
I mean, I don't know the right answer.
No, it's something to find out.
It's just a curious thing to think
It's
about.
a risky strategy, because at least when they're out, they're guaranteed, whereas these could go.
I find it funny. I mean, it didn't really come up in.
But if you're putting out less of these, there's less opportunity for them to go as well.
Yeah, that's also true.
It didn't really come up in that one, but it was kind of funny. When you use mercenaries for the otters, it actually says they take even wounds with you, and any odd wounds go. So if you go, I've got these guys, and you've dragged these otters into battle to kill me, and I roll a 3 and you roll so you roll 2 3s, so 3 people are dying on either side. That'd be that and that. So there'd now be then more otters than anything else. So it's almost like, depending on the battle, you want to be dragged into combat against your will.
I can't believe I rolled a 0-3 on that combat and then did another point for no victory points.
Grr.
Such ultimate dicketry.
I know.
It was bad.
Everyone on the audience thinks you're such a nice guy. They don't know what he's like. He's a terrible, terrible friend. He doesn't let me win.
You wouldn't want me to let you win. That'd be a hollow victory.
It would not feel like a normal victory. If you win against me, you had to earn it.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it doesn't take you guys much to win against me. So it's kind of a hollow statement.
But I really, really like this game. I really like it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to have it.
Yeah. It's got a lot of very interesting mechanics.
And I like how there's so much replayability with it.
Yeah.
I really like how you can swap out the factions and try again. I like how you can do... And I also like that the faction I like the least, which is actually the Vagabond, because I feel like it puts a little bit... The Vagabond role for... And you won't have seen it because we haven't actually played with it on the channel. Go figure. Because the thing about the Vagabond I find actually is it forces everybody else to deal with it, and they don't really get any points for dealing with it. So you kind of have to have sort of like a gentleman's agreement that you both gang up on the Vagabond player, because if just one of you goes up against him, then it gives the other one an opportunity to sort of stab the other guy in the back. And then if you ignore the Vagabond player, he can really run away with things, and also it becomes quite important for him to try and maintain the balance of power, because she's running around unhindered, and one of the big things about the Vagabond is she can just
go into the woods.
Yeah, but what I was going to say was what's it called?
Ignores priority. Ignores who owns the place. Stabs you in the front, then the back. Kneecaps you.
Goes in the forest.
Runs away with
commandeers. She commandeers all of your armies. So she runs into a clearing, commandeers your entire army, and then just decides where to go with it and go to war with it. So she can really upset the balance of power and your strategy and your plans. And so if she does that too much to one player, then that player might feel resentful, naturally. I find that what you probably saw a little bit, you might have spotted a tiny smidge of sort of resentment in this game as we sort of ganged up on each other or whatnot.
Cursed lizards.
But the Vagabond, I find, really exacerbates that, and not in a good way, because, again,
it's
you
just
don't...
a character to be annoyed at.
Well, even when you go to war with someone, even if it's not really in your interest, you still get a point for destroying a building. You know? If you can destroy a building, you still get a point for that. So if I'm going up against Michael, well, you don't have any buildings, actually. But if I'm going up against but I can just grab your I don't know. But the point is, if I'm going up against Ollie just because he's in the lead, like I might not need his clearings, but I might be trying to destroy his roosts just so he doesn't run away with the game. At least I also get like a bonus victory point for making that effort. But with the Vagabond, you don't get that because it doesn't have any buildings. So there's no bonus victory points. So you're going to war with it just to stop it from winning. Then you're sacrificing assets that could be used to further your agenda in order to prevent someone else from winning, which could open doors to the other players to win, right? And that creates this atmosphere of sort of kingmakery type behavior that I'm not a huge fan of. But you can have but there's still 5 other factions that are all really interesting and cool.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I don't hate the Vagabond so much that I wouldn't play with it. I think it works a lot better in a 3-player game than a 2-player game.
But it's also...
a lot better in a 4-player than a 3-player.
There's any combination of factions as well. Because it's... We're playing a 3-player partly because...
No, in a 7-player game, you have to play with all of them.
No. But in a 3-player game, you can have any combination of people showing up. So we might even sit down and play this next week, and we're all playing a different faction, and the game is entirely different. And, and even if
it feels very different.
Yeah, and even if we then go like, do you know what? Don't really fancy doing it like that. You can go, whoa, let's play the co-op version against the. So say there's only 2 of us in. Play the co-op version.
Yeah.
And then it's, instead of it being a cutthroat adventure of I need to score this and you're in my way, it's we need to clear the forest of these mechanical monstrosities. And I know they're not really, like, even in the fluff, they're not supposed to really be mechanical, but it's funny. It's like a Terminator invasion. That's how I'm imagining it. I'm just seeing them walk out of the fortress, glowing red eyes, paws on fire, metal, like, as the fake fur bleeds away.
I love that, actually, the idea of, like, the per 1000.
The Whisker 2000.
I was just going to tip all of these onto the floor and because I wanted to show you guys something, but then I decided it'd be too much of a chore to clean it all up. I didn't want to do that. So I just wanted to show you that on the other side of this, there's also another board. And the cool thing about... Oh, sorry, Bandit. Sorry.
Who didn't see that coming?
Sorry, Bandit. So the cool thing about the winter side of the board is that, as you can see, the river is different. And also none of the clearings have allocated suits. And that's because there are little suit tokens that you randomly put out in order to determine a random distribution of clearing types, which is really, really neat. It does warn you that this could really...
Unbalance it.
Yeah, unbalance it. It could give a big advantage to some factions, a disadvantage to others. So, it might not be for people who've not played before, or have limited experience, but it's still another really cool option that you can do and can try, and I'd love to try that as well. So I love how it's got all these different modes, different ways of playing, and yet they all feel like Root. Like a lot of games nowadays come with all these different sort of modes of play, different kinds of styles of...
Feels like you're playing a different game.
And yeah, every time it feels like you're playing like a different game, or some of them feel like they're not quite like the game you wanted to be playing.
Or it feels like one version of it is, this is the game.
Yeah, this is the game we intended to create.
And then the other side is they're just padding it out.
This is something we tacked on because, it was a stretch goal on the Kickstarter campaign, or the backers demanded it. But this all feels like sort of really interesting but slight variations of a game that feels consistently good. And I love that about it.
So, the big question. Would you play it again?
I would absolutely play it again. I would buy it. I'm so glad to have it.
Would you play it again?
Yeah. I just wouldn't pick it out first.
Would you want to play the co-op version? Wow, we've annoyed him that much he doesn't want to play with us. Even on the same side.
But doesn't the co-op version have to be played with the mechanical cat or whatever?
The mechanical cat is the opponent.
Yeah.
So you play against the cat.
Right.
It's whatever. I mean, I don't know if there's every combination of factions in the co-op. I don't think so. Actually, right. So here we go.
That's not the right book.
This is it right here. Look. So if you're playing with solo, you can play any of the expansion ones against the cats. if you're playing cooperative, you can do these combinations here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, who are these green people?
They're
Woodland
Woodland
Alliance, yeah. Of course. And then
You've played as them.
So actually what you can do as well is play with
the normal cat.
yeah, so we could have had the mechanical cat in our game today. And it would have just been the mechanical cat doing its thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been like another AI thing that we'd all have to have dealt with.
Mm.
Which is kind of cool. I don't know how I feel about that. But I haven't read the rules for mechanical cat yet, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, so you can play 4-player with AI.
Yeah, or if you were playing 2-player competitive and you didn't want to just have a sort of a direct wargame face-off, you could throw in the mechanical cat just to shake things up.
Yeah.
A bit like we did in Vast, which I haven't published yet.
Whereas it might not be the top of my list, I can appreciate how good a game it is actually, and how a lot of people would like it, and how easy it is for other people to. It's very easy for you to get out. It's not too heavy. I don't think that you can teach it to lots of people quite easily, and it'd be something that you could have your friends around a lot and introduce them to. And I imagine a lot of people would like this kind of game, definitely.
I feel like it's a really good entry level into this kind of game because these games typically tend to be very wargamey, very dense, very difficult, very inaccessible, and a lot of them have sort of very dry historical themes as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like, here's a version that's the opposite of that. It's shortish, it's light-ish.
That's what I do like about it a lot.
Yeah. And speaking as someone who, this was the first time I've ever played the game, I mean, I quite quickly picked up how to play with these guys, and I know they're low complexity, but I still feel like even watching what you guys were doing, it wasn't so big a leap to go, I don't have in some games when you look and you think some factions, I have no idea how to play them, and I would never want to play them. Mm-hmm. I feel like if I played the Lizard Cult or the Riverfolk, I'd have a fairly good idea of how to start.
Yeah.
And walking into a brand new game where you get a few hours of explanation from people who've only played the print and play version, I still felt very confident going into it that I could play the game.
Oh god, and that was such a nightmare to figure out all the rules for that because they just weren't. I wound up having to message Leader Games and then they didn't get back to me in time, so we just kind of had to make it up. And they literally got back to me the next day and explained everything. I was like, oh good, at least that's in time for the rules video.
But that's the thing, there's a lot of games out there that actually walking into it is an uphill struggle because there's so much they want to fit in the game that it has a steep learning curve. And in this one, they've managed to get around that by going, this is the steep learning curve. We don't recommend you play this straight away, but you can do if you want a challenge. Here's another side. And in the booklet, they've got, here's a learning to play suggested first 2 turns. And it walks you through it, which is, if you're a visual learner, that is perfect because it just tells you, this is what you're doing, follow us through it and understand each point.
Yeah, the rule books were very good.
Yeah.
And that's to be applauded.
Yeah, I was really impressed. And even with the opening cards.
And when we had any questions, we looked them up in the rules of the Laws of Root book. Yeah. And we tend to find our answers really quickly.
You even get this walkthrough card with every faction. So on the walkthrough, it tells you how to set up the board. And that's great. Any game that can very easily tell you how to play it in 2 turns. I mean, if you're taking that through someone normally, that's 15-20 minutes, and that's you have an understanding of the game.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
And then there's a picture of your board all set up as well.
Yeah, and I've played games before where setup's taken an hour. Because
and it's almost like, is it worth the effort?
Yeah, you get to the point of it's taken so long to set it up. I don't want to play the game now because this was supposed to be a 60-minute game.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I know a lot of board gamers and people who make board game media as well who complain when, and they're absolutely right to do so, I think, when something's got a badly written rulebook because, it's such a shame. We'll never know if this adventure could have been fun. We'll never know if this journey would have been worth it because we can't get on it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened somewhat in when Ben and I did our first Martian series because it took us, we had to actually sack off and cancel the shoot because we needed the whole day just to get through the rulebook. And the scenario we picked to do for the show, we had to cancel because it required us to find a document, which we found eventually. But we had to print it off from their website, and it was hidden in another document that was not even
an unrelated game.
Yeah, well, no, it was it was related to the game, but the document title had no relation to the scenario it was relevant to. So we had no idea that they were related, and we found it by accident.
That's bizarre.
So, but that's an extreme example, and they fixed it all now, so it's no longer an issue for people looking into the game now. But the point was that this could have been such a nightmare, and it was the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And that's great because, it was,
It's nice to play a game that they've understood how to write a well-produced and intuitive rulebook.
Mm-hmm.
They've clearly learned a lot from their previous ventures with Vast, and also probably with the rulebook they put out with the print and play. And so they've taken all of that on board, and they've done a really, really good job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we obviously had some questions when we were reading through and trying to play and figuring out how the interactions work. And I think every single time when we had the question and we looked in the rulebook, it was, no, if we actually read it as it's written out instead of how our brain's trying to force it, it's answered it on that page.
But for example, we had a really hard time figuring out what happened to Michael's guys who were in commitments for ages, and then we reread the gather funds step, and it's like move all the wars on the faction board into the funds box, and we're like, oh,
yeah,
right, yes, read that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in summary, a hit with us.
Yeah,
Sure.
Not your. I know from personal choice, it's not your first choice of game type.
But I of this game type, I think it's a very good game.
And I think that's the highest recommendation you're going to hear for Root, honestly.
So I really liked it. I think it's a well-constructed game. I like the artwork. I like the replayability. And
It's got very good replayability.
yeah, and it's accessible as a game.
And that's all.
I couldn't
it's
ask
hard
for anything else.
Yeah, and it's deep, and that's what I want. I want something that I can get everyone to play, but then also gives me an interesting challenge that I'm excited about.
And if we all get really annoyed at you and storm off, you can just play solitaire mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I hate solitaire mode. Props to Ricky Royal, who does all the solo stuff. Good job, man. I don't know how you manage it. I can't play by myself. I got my mind. So I have to try hard not to alienate all my friends.
Do you know why that is? It's because he's just like he is with us, but when he's the only person playing, he can't dick anyone over.
I just wind up dicking over myself. I'm like, gotta hate me!
You misanthropic. I can't add the other word in the end.
So I hope you guys enjoyed coming on the Root adventure with us. We've certainly had a blast. Bandit was very happy that you joined us. And we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, for a completely different adventure. Thanks for watching, everyone.
See you guys soon.
Enjoyed it.